the wood. Guntur lived alone at the edge of a remote village in Indonesia. He had no family, had never been married, and worked odd jobs to support himself. Generally, he was quite content with life in the quiet village. In his free time, he would sit outside his house and worked on his carvings. Guntur was gifted. He would make little toys, trinkets, and anything he fancied out of wood. He would spend hours on his projects and would be extremely satisfied if a rough piece of wood turned into an exquisite work of art exactly as he had imagined. One day, while foraging a little bit deeper into the forest behind his house, he came upon a small clearing by a tiny stream. The place was peacefully quiet, with a sliver of sunlight peeking through the dense trees above. Growing up, he had visited the place a few times with Lupin, his best friend from the village. Now that Lupin had moved into the city and started his own family, Guntur had never ventured into this part of the forest again. Until today. He could not remember how long he spent sitting on a rock and staring blankly at the stream. As the sun shifted and the forest clearing darkened, he realized that he had to make his way back home. He stood up, stretched, and then he saw it. A big, beautiful tree with branches stretched out gracefully around it. No other trees around was like it. It seemed to grow apart from the other trees around it, as if it did not belong there. He stroked one of the low-lying branches and wondered if he could make a nice carving out of it. Without thinking, he cut off a part of the branch and slowly made his way out of the clearing. Upon reaching his home, he cleared the bark from the cylindrical-shaped branch, and the pale smoothness of the wood beneath the bark instantly captivated him. He traced the swirls of the pattern with his fingers, staring at it for a long time. That night, he dreamt of the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. The dream was so vivid and real that he could almost feel the woman's fine hair brushing against his cheeks. The next morning, Guntur set to work. He carved, shaped, smoothened, and chipped on the piece of wood. He spent hours perfecting his sculpture. Everything had to be perfect, down to the last detail. As he smoothed the last of the remaining chips, he stepped back and admired his latest masterpiece. A carving of a head was the exact replica of the woman in his dreams. From the graceful neck up to the deep set of the eyes, under Guntur's skilled fingers, even her hair seemed to take on a life of its own. The months that followed saw Guntur ignoring life. He fell in love with his wooden creation. He dreamt of her every night. His house fell into a state of disrepair and his health deteriorated. The carving consumed him. He spent his waking hours staring at it, and he dreamt of her every night, night after night. He also started noticing shadows around the house, shadows that seemed to dance around him. It would disappear when he turned to look, but always there at the corners of his eyes. One night, a loud thud on the roof of his small house awakened him from his happy dream. He groped around weakly in the dark, trying to turn on the small gas lamp beside him. He heard the sound of footsteps on his roof. It went running back and forth. Guntur remained in his bed, and his hand found the carving beside him, and he held it tight, seemingly comforted by its presence. Suddenly, the door burst open, and there she stood, the woman of his dreams. Guntur was immediately spellbound. He called out to her, his arms opened, welcoming her. She glided slowly and slowly towards Guntur and gathered Guntur's weak body in her arms. The shadows of Guntur's house gathered around them as the gas lamp slowly died off. It was many days later when he was discovered by the villagers. His body was beginning to rot, and he seemed to be holding tightly onto a piece of wood. A rather ordinary piece of wood. So what do you think? Did the carving exist? Why was he holding on to an ordinary piece of wood when he had earlier painstakingly carved a nice sculpture out of an extraordinary piece of wood? Only Guntur knew, but unfortunately, he did not live to tell the tale.